It's almost like you had a mental block that you expected things to be super hard for you, and then you realize that you're actually just really strong and they're just not that hard.
I feel like I'm a very methodical person in how I approach everything. And so I'm gonna look at the route, I'm gonna study the route, and I'm gonna create a training program or a path that makes most sense to complete it. And so for me, like planning for something like Life of Villains, for example, I was like, okay, I need lots of power endurance.
This is Climbing Gold. So talk about this latest round of outdoor climbing. I mean, how did you get motivated again? How did you start training again? I mean, what did it feel like to suddenly tap back into that strength that you have?
Well, I think there was a lot of mental barriers. I feel like the mental barriers were probably bigger than the physical ones for me because I think stepping back in, I just kind of had these like arbitrary, uh, I guess I don't know, like these arbitrary barriers I had set for myself, saying like, "Oh well, it's been 4 years or so since I've planned an outdoor trip, and it's been like 8 years since I sent my hardest route." And I'm like, and I'm a completely different person. Like, if you put me at 15 when I sent Eravea next to me when I sent Life of Villains, like these are two different human beings, like size wise, age, like everything. So I'm just like, I don't know where to start. Or in this, it's not like I have a lot of examples of a blueprint. We're like, well, like, people who have looked like me who've done great things in the sport, like this is how you adjust your training or, approach climbing at a high level. Like I'm kind of just shooting in the dark and going by how I feel. So I was kind of
No,
like just had a lot of doubts on like what I could accomplish. And I kind of had to just convince myself, well, like if I zoom too far out, the big picture feels a bit daunting and messy. So I just have to zoom into like the individual things that I can control, which are my daily trainings and how I'm processing, the small projects that I'm setting for myself in the gym or being able to get through a program that Shayna created for me. And once I started doing that and I incrementally felt myself getting better, then the goals started to come a lot more into reach. And I was like, okay, well, at this fitness, I should be able to do this. Why couldn't I? I'm as fit as I could be. And I think that I almost was over prepared for the routes that I was doing because by the time I would show up for them, it's like everything would be coming together super quickly, quicker than I expected. So I don't know. I feel like once I was able to convince myself that these things were possible, then the physical part just came with it naturally.
yeah, it's almost like you had a mental block that you expected things to be super hard for you, and then you realize that you're actually just really strong and they're just not that hard. After you do a bunch of them, you're like, turns out this just isn't that hard for me. But that yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's classic.
I feel like I'm a very methodical person in how I approach everything. Like I really like, I don't know, I'm obnoxiously like OCD, like down to the details of everything having to be perfect. And so when I go for a project, I don't like showing up to things feeling like I didn't prepare adequately. And so I'm gonna look at the route, I'm gonna study the route, and I'm gonna create a training program or a path that makes most sense to complete it. And so for me, like planning for something like Life of Villains, for example, I was like, okay, I need lots of power endurance. The holds are like not so aggressively small, and so I don't have to do so much like hangboarding or campus boarding, which I don't like to do anyway. But I was like, I have to like, but power endurance is the key. And so once I felt like I could build up all that fitness, then by the time I got there, it was like, well, it doesn't, all those other things didn't matter. I was like, I know I'm fit enough. It does like, I mean, people looking at me, looking at my size or whatever, like those things just aren't, like, those aren't important anymore. It's about me and what I can do on the rock?
Has the speed with which you readapted to outdoor climbing and have succeeded on these projects, has that been surprising to you?
Definitely. I just feel like, I mean, even when I was a kid, the idea of doing 5:15 felt like just a ceiling that was so high that, like, I never even thought of it as a goal because it seemed just too out of reach. Especially, like, I started climbing in 2006, and back then, I feel like, I mean, 515A was the hardest route in the world, like, I mean, Chris Hutton, Jumbo Love, like, that was just, like, what it was. And so even when I was first talking to my coach, he was like telling me the grace that exists. And as a kid, I was like, well, what if I climbed 515? And they were like, well, it's possible maybe if you work hard enough, but it just never seemed like a thing. And also everybody who was doing it at that time just looked so different than me and came from backgrounds that were so different than me. I'm like, I didn't climb from a climbing background or a climbing family. So I'm like, that just didn't even seem like anything I could resonate with. I just didn't have an example that made it look like it was possible, so I just never thought about it. But I feel like it's one of those things where people see things as so high, the ceiling being so high, until you start to work hard enough for the goal to get closer. And once it becomes a reach, it's almost sometimes a bit overwhelming because you're like, whoa, it's like right there. What do I do now? Like when I showed up to Death of Villains and by like session 2 or 3, I was one hanging it, I was like, oh, what now? Like, I guess I gotta, like, put myself in sending mode instead of projecting mode, and, like, that's a different mindset, and I don't think I was so ready to do that so quickly, but I think, yeah, I had to, like, almost recenter myself and convince myself I could do it and that it was possible, and then show up with that mentality on the rock, but, like, that can be hard sometimes when you set goals that seem so beyond you, and then you get there and they're not that beyond you anymore. They're actually really, really close.